Wonderful. So good morning, everybody. This is Justin and Lizzie checking in for our live Facebook meeting on Sunday morning. It is the 3rd of December. It's my husband's birthday. So I am in the midst of trying to bake a cake. And as life would have it, I'm not the most deft baker. So I have a cake in the oven at the moment and I might have to whip off and get it out of the oven so it doesn't burn. But I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm sitting here in our kitchen with some little candles lit and some pictures of my grandfather nearby and a little nativity set. I'm realizing that it's December. And I'm very, very happy to be doing this. This has grown into, I feel like calling it my church in some way. Just being with Justin and knowing that there are people, you lot out there, who are with us is really, really a wonderful practice for me. So welcome to this time with me and with Justin. Today we're going to read this poem by Jennifer Wellwood, and I'm going to say a bit about how come I came up with this, and then maybe Justin, people have been saying that they really enjoy it when we both read the poem. We could both have a read of it. And I know we both enjoy reading too. So Justin, is there anything you want to say before we?
I want to say good morning to everyone. And I want to say again how glad I am that we're doing this. I keep on hearing from people, quite aside, Lizzie, whatever it is for the two of us to do this, knowing that these conversations that we're having are touching people and moving people and seem important is a wonderful gift. So I'm brewing a cold this morning, so I may croak and sneeze my way through what we're doing. And I'm very, very delighted, Lizzie, at this poem that you've chosen, because it seems, I imagine it's important for everyone, but as I read it, I could feel all the ways in which this was true of me and also not true of me, all the ways I have a body that runs from this. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad to be reading it together and seeing what comes.
Yeah. So I chose it because on Friday morning, so Friday is the day that we choose our sources, and on Friday morning, I had, I think, what you could classify as an argument with Matthew, my husband, and I noticed how defended I was. And I've read before this wonderful book by Jet Psaris, which is Jettpsaris. And I know Justin's been reading some of her work lately. But she has this book called Undefended Love, which I have found to be the most wonderful book on relationships and how our defenses get in the way of intimacy and hundreds of other things too. So I looked in her book and I thought, is there anything out of here that I could find as a passage to invite us into this conversation of what happens in our defense and in our feeling like we really would rather hang on to being right than for this to be resolved. And, speaking to lots of people, I know I'm not alone, that we have an attachment as humans to being right about things. And many times being right becomes more important than peace, becomes more important than relationship, becomes more important than the things that we really yearn for deeply. And so I've really tried to study this in myself and continue to study it. And having a husband or having a wife or having anyone you're basically in an intimate relationship with provides perfect fodder for this path of understanding the ways and observing the ways that we are defensive and that we are frightened. And this poem popped out of the one of the intro parts of Jet's book, Undefended Love. And it struck me that, as always, I search for things to bring in when I need them, and they often address something much more than the thing I'm searching for help on. And this was one of them, because as I read this and realized its connection to me and my relationship Matthew, I also realised it's me and my relationship with life. And it feels like a huge invitation, firstly, to my experience of being married to somebody and being in a relationship for these years. And it also shows me that that's not separate from anything else either, if I read this poem with all of the matters of life at heart. So in a way, this came from a deep inquiry into, you know, what the hell is going on in relationship when we're having an argument and we disagree with each other about stuff. And given everything else that's happening in each of our lives, on our paths, in all of our relationships, it feels appropriate to be in this inquiry as well, in a wider way. So I'm going to begin reading now. And then Justin, you can read afterwards. Willing to experience aloneness, I discover connection everywhere. Turning to face my fear, I meet the warrior who lives within. Opening to my loss, I gain the embrace of the universe. Surrendering into emptiness, I find fullness without end. Each condition I flee from pursues me. Each condition I welcome transforms me and becomes itself transformed into its radiant, jewel-like essence. I bow to the one who has made it so, who has crafted this master game to play its purest delight, to honor its form, true devotion.
So I'm going to read it too. Lizzie, do you know, does this poem have a title?
No, it didn't have a title.
It didn't have a title. I was wondering what she'd call it.
Not in the book, anyway.
Okay. Willing to experience aloneness, I discover connection everywhere. Turning to face my fear, I meet the warrior who lives within. Opening to my loss, I gain the embrace of the universe. Surrendering into emptiness, I find fullness without end. Each condition I flee pursues me. Each condition I welcome transforms me and becomes itself transformed into its radiant, jewel-like essence. I bow to the one who has made it so, who has crafted this master game. To play it is purest delight. To honor its form, true devotion. I'd like to say something right away, Lizzie, that really struck me. A couple of things that struck me in reading this. That's a lie. There are 1,000 things that struck me in reading this. But the first thing that came to me when you were reading was, I'm sure I'm not alone in this, in having the kind of body that wants to turn away. I've known this about myself ever since I was small, that when something undesirable, unwished for comes my way, it's really easy for me to freeze and to play really tiny, like it's not happening. If I sit really still and nobody notices and the world doesn't notice, it will pass. And if I can pretend to myself it's not true, it will not be true. So that's easy for me, and it's old. And so what moved me so much in hearing you read this poem was it has these two parts in it. The first part being what happens when we turn towards, and the second part, this gorgeous invitation that playing in life might be delight and devotion, even in the midst of all of these things we don't want to happening. That I think I often don't know when I'm turning away. So I can even think to myself, I can get very sophisticated about it and think, well, I'm turning towards my loneliness, I'm facing my fear. And it strikes me that even in the midst of that, even in saying that to myself, can itself be a way in which I'm turning away from exactly what's happening. And so this sounds so simple, and in a way it's incredibly simple, but there's also a way in which, at least in my own experience, I can kid myself. I'm still protecting myself, and I think I see it most in if I'm in difficulty in relationships, Lizzie, where maybe I get into trouble with this. I'll say to myself, well, I'm being open, and I'll say to the other person, of course I'm being open, and it's absolutely the case that I'm not. I'm simply protesting as much to myself as to anyone else. And it raises the question for me, what is it really to all of this is a kind of deep welcome, and it's also a kind of letting go that's required.
Yeah.
What is it really to both let go and welcome, and to mean it, and not only to mean it, but to actually find ourselves doing it, which is not the same as saying it. And there are moments when I know this too, when I can turn towards whatever it is that's happening and welcome it, and then I'm with her to play as purest delight, even when it's terrifying, even when it's grief-filled. So I'm right in the middle of this. Is the question that I'm bringing to this conversation is the trickiness of this for us.
Yeah, and I guess that's exactly what this poem got born of. Because I was in a fight and feeling justified, but justified in my, in my mind anyway, more aware perspective, and the strength of my holding on to a position is extraordinary. The strength of my determination and my not like feeling like life and death is at stake because my husband said something about my mother kind of thing. I mean, that's not what he said, but it's like this kind of the small stuff that then triggers me into this feels like life or death, and I will stand by this. And just then when you said letting go, that feels like the biggest, in that moment, the biggest threat to everything that I'm holding dear. And so this poem for me invites me into this question of what am I? Who am I? And how am I inquiring into that? That would either have me keep holding on or experiment with letting go. Because what's at stake really? If my true identity is something deeper and beyond my possessions, my opinions, my preferences, the things I like and things I don't like, my relationships even. If who I am on the deepest possible level, or even just one level deeper than I am now, is different than that, not as much as at stake as I might have thought or felt or experienced in my body. And that's what I think, for me, this poem is all about paradox. And, the tighter you hold on to something, the more likely it is to die when you're holding on to it because you were desperate for it. And that invitation into paradox and realizing that the very opposite thing is going to happen if you do the thing that you really want to do to something. So the very opposite of your intention will come about. Feels like a really deep invitation to question who on earth we are, what we're doing, what a human life is, what this being means. And I feel so gladdened by this line of who has crafted this master game. To play it is purest delight, to honor its form, true devotion. And for me, honoring the form of this master game and the deep commitment to life that I experience is to live oriented towards life as acceptance. And what does it take to accept what's happening now and treat it as part of the master game, rather than feeling like a victim or feeling like I'm being tumble-dried around in something. But what's here for me? Like what's the remedy? You know, what's being given that has my healing at its heart? And how might I live in trusting that and welcoming it, rather than having an opinion that holds me apart from it? And I think this is the whole thing about turning towards life, is that turning towards life means accepting that life is here for us as a gift, as an unfolding of grand master game proportions that invites us to turn towards it. And that's a whole different life than if we're resisting it and denying it. And of course, there's all that you said in that, Justin, which is there is no end to us denying or being in denial about whether or not we're really being that as well. And even to know when you're being honest is hard sometimes. And even to know when we're having integrity about something is a challenge.
There's so much in what you're saying, Lizzie. One of the parts that I, as I'm listening to you, finding myself wanting to tease out that I will do my best to do, and I may trip over this as I try.
I'm just doing a cake thing, by the way.
Okay. Is
do you want to see my cake?
Well, let's see your cake before I say anything else.
It's got squashed into the top kind of thingy because I didn't take it off. See, that's the kind of thing that happens. Yeah, it presses up against the thingy. So I'm sorry, everybody, if you're having to get this, but I always think it's quite fun when something happens on a live video. And this is actually happening.
What we didn't know, Lizzie, this morning was this was becoming a cookery podcast.
Yeah, this is like the opposite of Nigella Lawson, where like this is just exactly what Nigella Lawson would not do.
Never do. Which
is that she wouldn't put a cake in and not take the top thing off, and then try and get it out when she's doing a live video on Facebook, which I just did actually quite well. But look, it actually looks all right. Look.
It looks beautiful.
It's as if I made that pattern. Hold on.
It's all part of the design.
Yeah, this is all part. See, this is the master game, Justin. Right there. Master game. Right. Okay, sorry, Justin. I hope I haven't like ruined your thoughts.
Not at all.
Now it's out of the oven. I can be less anxious about the fact that I'm going to burn Mackie's birthday.
I'm so glad you're baking cakes in the middle of this, and would love to share it around with everyone as well. The thing that I was trying to get a grasp on, which I'm going to do my best to say something about, seems so clearly implied by what you were saying, which is we need to know ourselves as, we need to know that there's something bigger than us that's not us, that's outside us, that we're part of in order for this to happen. So one of the reasons why it feels so risky seems to me to let go and to welcome, really, really welcome something like fear or shame or, whatever it is. It's risky when we take ourselves to be the ones who are in charge of the universe. So if I let go to my fear, or if I risk that I might say something and you might abandon me, or if I don't defend myself, then the whole universe is going to end. It's going to collapse. And because of that, I better hold on, because why would I dare do anything else? But when we know ourselves, in those moments in life when we know ourselves as some part of something that is way bigger than us, that we can trust, So I think it probably doesn't help to imagine ourselves as part of some cold, unfeeling universe in which I'm still essentially alone. And if I get this wrong, I'll die and everybody will die. That doesn't help so much. We have to know ourselves as part of something that has deeper coherence to it. And that is the place in many religious traditions of God, and in other traditions it's life itself. And then I've been thinking a lot whilst you've been talking, there's this wonderful over the last few days I've been thinking a lot about arguments. And in the Jewish tradition there's this wonderful idea of if you're going to have an argument, have an argument for the sake of heaven, which means not for the sake of beating you, not for the sake of being right, not for the sake of winning, not for the sake of being safe, but for the sake of the bigger something that we're both part of. Can we be in this for the sake of something way, 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 way bigger than ourselves? And in order to do that, we have to know ourselves as held by something that's bigger than ourselves, that we can trust even if things that we don't want to happen. So that's the big point here, is it's not, you could have something outside ourselves be my secret power that I'm going to use to beat you, because I know that there's something bigger than me. I can smash you, not that. Because there's something bigger than me, because life is way bigger than me, is unfolding through me, because whatever way you want to say it. It's okay for me to turn towards fear and shame. It's okay for me to be interested in all the ways that you might also have an angle on this. It's okay to welcome the part of me that's terrified. It's like all of that. And that's the language I was wondering as you were talking. I was trying to feel into, so what is it that makes it possible for us to do this? And that's my best guess so far, is it's that kind of remembering. And one more thing to say about it, it's probably the kind of knowing of the way life is that we have instinctively the moment we come into the world, of being part of everything, being held by everything and everyone. And of course we lose sight of it very quickly because of all the things that happen.
Yeah.
Is this making sense to you, Lizzie?
It really is. And it feels to me that there's also this other thing that's occurring to me, that a way of feeling I think what you're saying, like the benevolence of this bigger thing, as in the goodness of life, also arises in this thing we're calling community as well. So I can face my fear when I feel like somebody's with me. I can face my shame when I'm saying it into a place when somebody doesn't judge me. I feel like human connection is what is the closest, or the most obvious to me anyway, route into this world. As in, if it wasn't for the human connections that I have, it would be so hard for me to have the courage to see this as a master game. Like somehow the web of human connection holds me to entertain playing the game, as this poem talks about. And to remember ourselves as one another, and that we aren't separate from each other, feels like it's made of these baby steps of human sharing and community that, practiced multiple times, build this web from which it's impossible to fall. And of course it's there anyway, but the kind of really normal pragmatic part of us that needs some evidence, to build our human connections and to be in community and inquire, like we're doing now, about what's happening when we have an argument. what's going on, what's at stake, who am I, what are the ways that I'm in denial about stuff, or defending myself, or attacking because I feel so cornered or whatever. To have loving and also challenging relationships that in a way are a manifestation of the master game as well. And one of the bits in this poem that really stood out to me, which is, each condition I flee from pursues me, each condition I welcome transforms me and becomes itself transformed into radiant jewel-like essence. That for me is this articulation of the way that the master game has the people in our lives be the people in our lives. And then what gets born from those relationships has meaning and purpose. And within those relationships, whatever I flee from will continue to scrape my heels and ask for my attention, because that's what's wanting to be born in my life, is whatever the lessons are, whatever the experience is that's being brought to me. And then each condition I welcome transforms me. It's like this, it reminds me, Justin, of our conversations about the Wizard of Earthsea. And instead of this big black feeling following me around, I can turn around to meet it. And this feels like, to me, an articulation of the nature of the patterns we find ourselves in. It's the same things that keep happening again and again because we're in some way in flight from them. And to see if I can turn towards, so for me, turn towards my defensiveness about being right about things, being determined that I've got to kind of correct something about Matthew's perception of something. In this instance of this argument on Friday morning, like I was like, I have to, this is life or death, I have to correct him. It's not right that he thinks the thing that he thinks. And of course, we're in this phase where like all this family stuff is coming up because people have died in our family and stuff is coming to the surface. And the analogy that I've come up with is, it's like a really still lake has been trampled on, and all of the stuff that was really smooth silt has kind of all then clouded the waters, and we're all now in this cloudy water. And so the discussions that are happening between everyone have like, stuff in them. And so it really does bring up a lot of things, and to trust that I can turn towards all the ways that I defend in the context of my family, in the context of Matthew, in the context of the world and what I think about what should be done. And it feels like the master game is presenting lots of opportunities to me all the time to inquire into my deeper identity, that I might be able to do this thing that you're talking about, Justin, of letting go. And seeing what's left if I haven't got the thing I was holding on to so tightly. Mostly when I do it, I'm still alive. I can still drink a cup of tea. I still can feel light shining through the window. Like, if I do let go of my position, as far as I can tell, like everything carries on quite normally, even though it feels like the world would stop and everything would be wrong.
Mm. As you are talking about it, it's striking me very deeply how the way to say this, how extraordinarily important this is. So what I mean in saying that is, it's not only important in our capacity to live with one another, that we can turn towards our own defensiveness and turn towards our own fear, but it's also deeply entwined with our capacity to even live with ourselves. In order to do this, I as you keep talking, it's striking me again and again that implied in what you're saying is we have to be able to welcome the parts of us that are afraid and the parts of us that feel like we're going to die. are sure, and the parts of us that are so afraid of being abandoned that we've abandoned them because it's too impossible to keep in close with them with all of their efforts and moves that they make. And that this is in many ways nothing short of a life or death question for us. Because there's a way in which it's impossible to live as long as we're fighting everything away. So this deep trusting move where we can turn towards not just what's coming towards us apparently from outside us, but what's arising within us, and welcome it, and not try and conquer ourselves, fight it away, split it off, is really what it's required to stay here in life fully. And sometimes maybe even at all. You know, I'll talk about this more some other time, and we're close to the time that we have, but I think I've mentioned in our conversations in here being really seriously unwell 5 years ago, and one of the things I know about my illness at the time was that it was born from doing the opposite of what she's talking about in this poem. That my own violent non-acceptance of the parts of myself that were afraid, my attempt to conquer them, was a really big part in what had me become sick. So that's why I'm saying it this way, is that one of the ways we can read a poem like this is as a kind of balm. You know, we read it and we go, oh, what a lovely poem. But there's another way to read it, which is as a kind of urgency, which is this is nothing short of the most important question that we can ask ourselves. And that's as you're saying everything that you're saying, I'm feeling that urgency of, okay, time to wake up.
Yeah.
Time to find myself, bowing to the one who has made it so, who has crafted this master game, and to play it as a form of devotion.
Yeah. And Justin, it's, you know, the thing you said about arguing for heaven's sake feels like we're making a distinction between, you know, I can still feel and think the thing that feels important to me, but to be in conversation from defensiveness, nothing happens other than defense, 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 defense. Like nothing progresses. So if I'm not arguing for heaven's sake and haven't found a way of facing what my part in things is, what I can address in myself as my defenses and my stuff, I can bring myself to the conversation in a whole other way, where I'm not trying to annihilate you for what you think, but I'm actually in the conversation for heaven's sake, not for my sake, not even for your sake. And then that makes me more aware of how to make the distinction between the sakes. Like, is this for heaven's sake or is this for my sake? Am I just trying to push my point home here because I've got an opinion and I think I'm right? Or is this have some greater good? And how am I coming at it? Am I coming at it from the small, frightened place? Or am I able, in my awareness, to generate a different kind of conversation from a place in me that's more healed, more resolved around something? And that feels like really urgent, like a whole world is different when that gets to be possible in any sense, any small sense even.
What I love about an argument for heaven's sake is it doesn't have us turn away. So that would be the misreading of a poem like this, would be, at least I know that I could read it easily as, oh, okay, well, I should just kind of, it would be another way of being very still. I'll welcome my fear and I'll welcome my loss and I'll welcome, and then I won't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the not welcoming. So an argument for heaven's sake allows us to stay in the, for the sake of something bigger, there's something we need to talk about here, or something that needs doing. And sometimes an argument for heaven's sake is one in which we agree to stop. And sometimes it's one in which we continue talking. So, and I think that's what Jennifer Wellwood, although she doesn't talk about arguments here, this second part of the poem is inviting us into life for the sake of something that is not our own certainty that every move we make is the world's going to fall apart. We can be in our lives for the sake of something bigger than ourselves, and all of this becomes possible from there.
And also, Justin, just really quickly, just to see the people in our lives as our teachers, as in they become the invitations into each of these places that we are asked to turn towards. It's a sure thing that that's what people do for us. And people who wound us, people who cross us, people who, make us rageful, people who hurt our feelings, people who annoy us in the street because they don't walk fast enough, whatever. There's this master game feel is like, so what if I were to be a person who asks, well, who are you in the master game? And what a different life it is than all the kind of other things we do with ourselves than that.
It's a beautiful thought on which for us to end. We're just a little bit over our advertised half an hour. Well, thank you so much for this, Lizzie.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me get my cake out. I'll maybe post something about what the cake ends up looking like.
Yes, I think everyone should get to see something about the cake. Yes. Well, there you go. There's all of life right in the midst of what we're doing.
Yes.
So I'm glad for.
Indeed.
Well, happy birthday to Matthew.
Thank you. And everybody have a wonderful rest of Sunday, or you may be listening. There's one thing I wanted to tell you all, actually. On Monday, I'm going to be introducing you to a couple more people from Third Space. So at midday, I'm going to be live online with our wonderful colleagues, Amanda and Nina, who are talking about a supervision program that we're going to be offering in the new year. They are really wonderful, lovely ones. And it may not be that lots of people watch, but we wanted to have their voices in here and have them introduced to you so that you can learn more about the other people who are in our small little Third Space setup with us. So that will be on Monday, and of course it will just be in the group forever as the other videos are, so you can watch whenever you'd like to. But Amanda Fasahi and Nina Atkinson I'm going to be interviewing them about their supervision offering that they're putting together at the moment. And they are part of Third Space. So I think
I have a question for you about that. Is that going out on the Turning Towards Life group, or is that going on the Third Space coaching?
Well, it will be both, but we're going to do it live into Turning Towards Life is the plan, and then we can post it anywhere else that we want. Okay.
So Monday, 1 o'clock UK time.
12 o'clock. Midday.
12 o'clock, right? Monday, midday UK time. Okay, great.
Cool. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy Sunday.
Bye.